So on that note, we are talking now about spoken words, and it's a really good segue to our next topic. Totally from left field now, books. So one of
All
the things that I
right.
was interested, I was trolling around on Jess's Instagram page as I was figuring out, how we're going to go about with our discussion today. And I noticed Jess does something very interesting that very few people do anymore. Number one, it's called reading. And and I'm not talking about posts on Instagram. I'm not talking about like magazine clips. I'm talking like these things called books. There was this breed of people back in the dinosaur days named authors, and these authors went and they wrote out stories and they published them on paper, which came from trees. It got binded together and it was called a book. And you went to a bookstore or a library where they rented you these books, and you actually read stories, full stories, not like little clips and snippets, like an actual thing. And it was quite a fascinating thing back in the day. People go check out in the museums, they'll learn about this. So, because you know what, since the invention of the computer and cell phones, reading is just it's become a lost art, unfortunately. I'm somebody that when I was a kid, I used to read like a book a day. Like I'd go to the library, go get 7 books, read a book a day. It was a big thing for me and my family. I loved writing. I loved the idea of being an author. And then I was looking at your page, I thought to myself, wow, this girl goes and gets books and she's reading books, hard copy books. What's the deal with this? So, Jess, in today's world, is there still a thing? Is there a need for physical books?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And it's funny, you're making me think like when people refer, an author or someone, someone's work that I should be reading, they're like, oh, you can buy it on Amazon. I'm like, no, I'm going to go to Indigo and I'll literally just drive out there to buy it. Even though I grew up in the age of technology, I've never really been drawn to it. It has facilitated my life a lot, but there's something so special about getting a physical copy of a book. Maybe it's because that's all I really knew in school. I mean, I'm going to age myself, but essentially, when I was in school, we were still learning through physical books, right? So that for me became like first nature. And then when we got into high school, we started using computers more often. Um, but I think there's really power in having a book in front of you. For me, it's really important to be able to highlight and take notes when I'm reading. So when I'm reading, it's not just to pass time. I often read to gain some sort of knowledge and to be able to take that and use that in some sort of aspect of my life, right? So if you look through my books, whether it's books that I read when I was in university or even the books that I'm reading right now, you'll see they're highlighted, there's notes everywhere. I like referring back to my books. And I also like it because one, I'm taking out the important information that I found at the time that I read it, but it also helps me understand kind of where my mindset was at years ago when I was reading the book. So I was actually going through a few of my books as I was moving. And there was a book that I read when I lived in Switzerland, and it was called The Mindful Way Through Anxiety. And what I loved about that book is embedded within each chapter were a set of questions and tasks we had to do. So not only was I reading, but I was taking action as I was reading. And when I was flipping through the pages, I even saw the notes that I took and the answers that I wrote. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like this has changed, or this is still happening in my life. So there's just power in reading a book and being able to take out the information and then using that information wherever you're going. I get easily distracted when I'm on the computer. There's so many things going on all at once. We're all trying to multitask. So when I'm reading, I'm really trying to focus on that thing that I'm reading, whether it's for 10 minutes, whether it's for, I don't know, an hour, just so that I'm not distracted by anything else. So yeah, if you ask me, I'm a huge, huge, huge proponent of reading physical books. And I also love Indigo. Something about the atmosphere there is really inviting to me. So that to me becomes like my me time. I go and browse, I see a few other things that I like, I pick up a book, I'm able to browse through a few of them, and then I just purchase them. So yeah.
I love it. And you brought us a sample today, right?
I have a few books here. Yeah, not all of them are with me,
Okay.
but okay. So the book that I spoke about, The Mindful Way Through Anxiety,
Great.
phenomenal book, by the way. If people haven't read it, I think
Beautiful
a
looking
lot
book.
of us, it's a little ripped up. A lot of us struggle with anxiety. That's something that I've dealt with for a long time.
You're here.
I real, I realized what was triggering it. There were a number of things. One of them being the food that I was eating. which is crazy if you think about it. And after I stopped eating dairy and gluten and a number of other items, I noticed I wasn't anxious, but it was only a month later. I was like, my life hasn't changed. My workload hasn't changed, but I'm not as anxious as I used to be. So back to this book, I'm going to flip through a few pages. I have notes everywhere and I highlight my book. So even here, so the page was essentially talking about the things to keep in mind when practicing mindfulness. And I wrote down what are the things that give me anxiety. So like you see my notes over here.
Yes, yeah.
So this was back in 2016. I was living there. And for me, I wrote, this hasn't changed, waiting for people when they are late, and time. So punctuality. So time for me is my best friend, but my worst enemy. I'm very time oriented. Like I time block. If you look at my calendar, everything's put in there. But also because I'm so focused on time, I rush through it. So say theoretically speaking, right now it's 1:30, right? I know I have an appointment at 2:30. I'm gonna like think about that time from 1:30 to 2:30 so much that I'm rushing through it. So I've seen myself do this often. Say for example, it's 1:23. 1:23 is closer to 1:20. I start thinking, oh my God, it's 1:30. I have to rush. I have to go do things. So that's something I've been working on. But I like this because I'm able to reflect back on it and I'm able to pull out the important information, especially when I'm reading things that information that's not familiar to me, right? I make my own notes the way I understand it and I simplify it.
Interesting. Well, I love this. And this is the one that we agreed we are going to debate on. Sneakers and heels. We love fashion. This is all in good love, and that part, was more just steering people style wise and where they can start thinking of. Books is and organization, productivity is a very big passion of mine. And just seeing the fact that you love reading and you're putting time into it and looking at subject matters that are helping you and helping yourself, which will then allow you to help others even better. Because how can you help others? You can't help yourself, right? I love this self-improvement. I'm a big proponent of. So I say, amen, yes, all day long, for sure. Now, when I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to take it to yet another level. And here it goes.
Let's hear it.
So as we know, I practice law, chosen lawyer. So it's kind of in the underling. I promise not to talk too much business because this is a cultural lifestyle podcast and whatever you want to slice and dice it. But at the end of the day, our work lives, our personal lives do kind of go hand in hand. So this is where my thinking goes. So as a lawyer, I was doing a lot of leases. I still do a lot of lease work for people. So people rent a space and they hand me this giant 50-page document and I need it reviewed, blah, blah, blah. So the way it was done in the old days until very recently, I would print it off, I would mark it up, send it back, blah, blah, blah. Amazing. Except for the fact, okay, so I am now in another office and that physical copy is sitting over there. Problem. Okay, I make my hand notes. I have doctor style handwriting. Not many people can read it. I can read it, but nobody else really can. That's a problem. And it kind of goes on and on like that. And then we start scanning it back to each other. And it got worse and worse. But I said, I need that physical copy. I want to hold that physical lease. I need it. That was a crutch. And it was time to change. And my thinking was like this: I'm going to force myself to change and evolve. So how I did it was, I'm going to go on the dual monitor system. So I'm going to pull up the lease and I'm going to put it on one screen and I'm going to do my edits on another screen and with my notes and stuff. And then what happens is I save it virtually. So anywhere I'm in the world, I'm in Panama and you call me up, you're like, hey, let's talk about the lease. There we go. I got it. I found it. And we can go through it the same way. And then I started thinking to myself, this is how I want to function all part of my life. Then back to the Panama example. I bring a book. I'm going to be on the beach. You know what? And besides pina coladas and, dancing on the beach, I want to read and relax a little bit. And I'm reading this book the same way you just brought that. And I love that book. That book is sitting in my backpack, everything. And I'm like, oh, I really wish I brought this other book. And I love that book. But damn, I left that book on my nightstand at home. What am I going to do? Wouldn't it be great if that book was available to me now at all times? So I finally bit the bullet myself and I went to the Kindle route. And I said, it's not going to work for me. And I said all the same stuff as far as how people said, like, as far as distractions. And that's where I thought, you know what? I'm not going to go the iPad route. I'm going to go on a dedicated e-reader route. and I'm just going to be able to view it on e-readers, and it's going to be. And in the beginning, it was really, really hard. I love the idea of turning the pages and the way it's
Yeah.
versus the reader. But then I'm like, wow, the reader is so light instead of lugging the book, you know? And I
Right.
can have 10 books with me at once, and I can read them anywhere I want, because all I got to do is bring the Kindle. So
Hmm.
from a portability standpoint, from an ease to use, I make my notes. And let's say I was reading 3 different books. And I'm like, I remember I wrote myself a note. All I got to type is in the note that I remember. It'll find it for me, that searchability function of it.
Where are you
So
writing the notes?
you can
As you're
you can
reading?
pop you can as you're reading, you're like, you can pop a thing, type yourself a comment,
Oh,
and there's a comment
nice.
sticky sitting over there.
Nice.
And
Okay.
you can do a search and be able to find anything you wrote at any point. Like, for example, I stopped using sticky notes a long time ago, so I use Evernote. I love Evernote because Evernote's like my collection of sticky. So like for example, if you and I talk about salsa dancing, okay, we're gonna go salsa dancing Thursday night. I go into Evernote, I just type in salsa, it'll tell me every note I've ever written on salsa, rather than I'm going through my drawers, I'm going through everything and trying to
Right.
find those sticky notes. So that's where I went to the e-reader route, and I was a big proponent. I still love the look of books and everything. So I was like, that's why I was fascinated. I'm like, I felt like I was one of the last ones, and then I'm like, no, there's still people who are carrying strong the physical books.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know what? I've joined like the audiobook side of things. And
Yes.
so what I'll sometimes do is I'll get the audiobook and I'll also
Oh,
get the physical book.
yes.
And I think certain things resonate differently when you're reading, when you're listening. So I'll play the book when I'm driving, and
Yes.
then perhaps I'll read it afterwards or before. It really depends. I'm okay. I love getting any sort of knowledge. So
Yes.
whether it's before or after, it's different. But the e-readers, I can't do it. I can't. It reminds me too much of a cell phone. And for
Yes.
me, I don't know. There's too much distraction. Like even on my phone, I turn off my notifications,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's overwhelming. When I'm on my computer, please, all notifications, because I'm in a space where I'm working. Whereas
Yes.
on my phone, I sometimes, I'm on my phone because I'm speaking to a family member, and I don't want to get all these distractions. So that's the way I feel with anything pertaining to like technology and reading. But I may be wrong. I've honestly never tried it. I've never had an interest in it. So I'll stick my route. However, I do see the value in getting an e-reader. You did make a good point. If you're out of the country and one day you're in the mood for one book and then the other day you're in the mood for the other, you can access it so easily. And I have struggled where like I take all my books and I'm carrying them in my purse and it gets really heavy. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you got to skip gym days because you pulled your back, you pulled your shoulder from carrying the books. No, I hear you.
Can you imagine? Hey, how did you hurt yourself? Oh, I had 3 books in my purse.
And
Yeah.
I'm sure it happens. And it's sure the thing is, and I tried different variations as well. And I do still have some physical books, because one of the things, I walk into my home office. I love the look of my book collection. I only have like 7 of them. But it's funny. All these books I've had over the years, but I donated a lot of books to libraries, and I gave them away because I didn't want to keep them anymore, because I just felt like there was clutter. But there's few
Hmm.
strategic ones like that resonate with me. I like the look of it, and I think there's still a prestige level of looking at a physical book. So I am going to agree with you on that end of it. That number one, as far as from the looks, it's one thing I don't like when I'm seeing clutter for no reason. I hate
Hmm.
when I see books on floors. I see torn books and they're all over the place. I feel it's just chaos. There's no need for that. But if you have a beautiful collection of them and they're bound nicely, by all means, all day long, go ahead, have your books. And there is still value in flipping in it. Like if you are going to do that, and I still have some, I enjoy it. But it's funny how like I got rid of the iPad because I found with the iPad specifically, it was no different than having a giant iPhone. Like the
Yeah.
temptation is too much there. You turn on the notifications,
Hmm.
even if you turn off certain things, they still pop up to you. The screen is so beautiful. You know what? I might as well just go on some YouTube while I'm doing this, catch some old episodes of The Chosen Life, whatever I'm going to do, but read. But when you bring the e-reader, the Kindle, for example, or there are a bunch of other ones, it's funny how they look almost like a physical book now. Like when you're turning the pages, they make it so minimally of a reader that its purpose, because it also, my understanding is with the lighting and everything else, so it doesn't damage your eyes the same way it
Hmm.
would with electronic devices. So like I use it at night. I'll read over certain things. I'll have a certain book I'm into, And I feel like it's almost like just a thin physical book, like like a paperback. It almost looks like a paperback. So it's amazing how
Exactly.
technology. So if you're watching this episode and you know Jess and you love Jess, you like Jess, you anything at all, you know Jess. If it's her birthday, if it's a special occasion, let's get her onto an e-reader. Let's see, and then we'll bring her back in a year and see if she's still onto the physical books or not.
I don't know about that. Can I tell you a little secret? My laptop is right now resting on 4 massive real estate books. My stand is in the office. I was like, oh, great. So you see, it serves another purpose. But no, I'm more than happy to try new things. I think if we don't try, we don't know. So I'll take you up on that offer. My birthday's in August, Jay.
Oh boy, so we know we already got kicks, we got e-readers. The list is growing as the minute goes. Thank you for enjoying today's episode of the Chosen Life podcast. Go ahead and hit the subscription button below and the notification bell to catch all of our great shows. And remember to contact the Chosen Lawyers when you are ready for your next real estate and commercial transaction. Go to kormans.ca.